particular have really caught our attention. We've got Xi Jinping, the leader of China, we've got Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia, and we've got Kim Jong-un from North Korea. I just wonder if we can turn to you, Stephen.
Yes, there's obviously a big optic in terms of having these three leaders sat watching this parade, which to me tells me there's a evolution of an alliance that's occurring here right under the West's nose. And it's been happening for some time. But the big thing for me was just the sheer volume of military capability. And that's all a statement. You know, that's all there on purpose. None of this is by mistake. And you look at the sheer numbers of the People's Liberation Army in terms of numbers of troops, numbers of tanks, artillery. You look at the aircraft in the air. You know, Russia, China, and North Korea are cementing something here. But when it comes to alliances, you can sort of see fragmentations in, and now we see a strength-building alliance, which isn't going to be good for the West.
We're entering into this new era of military parades where superpowers like the US and China are putting all their hardware, all their toys on display for us to see. I mean, what's it like to see those things just literally being paraded in front of our eyes?
The size and sort of spectacle that the UK would never do something like that. I do think there is sometimes strength in silence.
I wonder if you can give us a sense of Xi Jinping.
Well, Xi Jinping is interesting in a way in that he's a real mystery man. I mean, he gives very little away. People don't know what music he likes, really. Does he play sport? Apparently he plays ping pong or something. I've never seen him do it. You never see him crack a joke. Do you know what I mean? He barely cracks a smile. And when you compare him to other Chinese leaders like Jiang Zemin and Deng Xiaoping sticking cowboy hats on and carrying on, and I mean Jiang Zemin showing off these other languages, etc.
I mean, he's not given anything away. He probably likes that because when he came in, there was this huge anti-corruption crackdown. He used it to take out all his political enemies, and so within the party, you know, man, no one's going to really take it up to him. And I think part of the criticism of this style of leadership is that he's surrounded by yes men, and they are mostly all men. Politburo Standing Committee, for example, no women there, and he's appointed his old friends to the Politburo Standing Committee. The other factions aren't represented there anymore, so that's kind of what he's like. As for ordinary people, well, they call him Xi Dada. It's kind of an affectionate name for him. I guess I guess in one way you could think of it as like Big Xi, but it's more like Uncle Xi or something like that. It's kind of affectionate. While we're talking about it, I should say ordinary Chinese people have some nicknames for the other leaders you're speaking about.
Tell us, please.
Jin Sampong is a beauty. Fatty Kim the Third, or Kim Fatty the Third, it should be. It's a reference to him being the third Kim, and of course the size of him, etc. And even if you hear Chinese government officials calling him that, Kim Fatty the Third. And for Vladimir Putin, it's Pudadi, which is like calling him Emperor Putin. He doesn't get it as much as Jin Sampong, but everyone calls Kim Jong-un Jin Sampong here, right?
Donald Trump put out a disgusting message about the death of Charlie Kirk. You know, I was worried when this happened. We are now going to see these MAGA types declare open season on the left. Even at this point, we don't even know anything about the shooter or the motivations of the shooter. Doesn't matter. If the motivations were left-wing or right-wing, I will condemn it exactly the same way no matter what. But there was a fear I had that, this is now going to become a tit for tat. And unfortunately, Donald Trump went on TV and absent any information at all about the situation, rather than dampening down the rhetoric and saying this is a time for us to come together, Trump says the radical left are the cause of this and we are going to go after them. It comes from the top, and this is going in a very dangerous direction.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie
to Nazis and the world's worst
mass murderers and criminals.
This kind of rhetoric.
I certainly don't incite violence.
Knock the crap out of them. I'd like to punch him in the face.
I don't condone violence, and I don't talk about violence.
I would have done well, but I would have been boom. Beat that.
I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people will.
Maybe you should have been roughed up. absolutely disgusting what he was doing.
If you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of him, would you? Seriously. I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you. Try not to hurt him.
If you do, I'll defend you in court. Don't worry about it. In the good old days, this doesn't happen because they used to treat them very, very rough. And when they protested once, you know, they would not do it again so easily. We've become weak. We've become weak.
And you know what? The audience swung back. And I thought it was very, very appropriate. The audience hit back. And that's what we need a little bit more of now.
Part of the problem and part of the reason it takes so long is nobody wants to hurt each other anymore, right?
I don't know if I would have done well, but I would have been out there fighting, folks. I don't know if I would have done well, but I would have been boom, boom, boom. Because you plan on paying for the legal fees of this older gentleman in North Carolina who's under bunch of protesters. From what I understand, he's sticking a certain finger up in the air. And that is a terrible thing to do, and it's from somebody that, frankly, wants to see America made great again. It's possible you could help him with legal fees if this man needs it.
I've actually instructed my people to look into it, yes.
It's a conservative roadmap for a Republican presidency to reshape the entire federal government. President Trump repeatedly distanced himself from this on the campaign trail last year, despite many of its contributors working on his election team. He since appointed some of its authors to lead some of the same federal departments and agencies that they devoted long chapters to for the Project 2025 agenda. Russell Vogt, who orchestrated the whole project, but also wrote the section on the Office of Management and Budget, now runs the Office of Management and Budget. Brendan Carr, who wrote the chapter on the Federal Communications Commission, now runs the Federal Communications Commission. 8 months into Trump's second presidency, the authors of Project 2025, they kind of feel like their time was worth it because a significant amount of policy proposals in this thing have already been implemented, with more in progress. President Trump's evisceration of federal workforces focus on establishing a federal government loyal to him. Move down to the first chapter. The dismantling of the Department of Education and of USAID resemble the plans laid out in this book. The firing of the FBI director in the middle of his 10-year term and the elimination of any sort of independence between the FBI and the White House are written into this book. Trump's war on climate research is taken straight from these pages. The April firing of nearly 400 scientists who author the National Climate Assessment, which tells us where we are as a country in the fight against climate change. Page 59. The White House has re-embraced coal as a valuable energy source while pushing solar and wind energy to the side. Page 377. Many of the administration's attacks on abortion rights and contraception access are sourced all the way through this book. In March, the Trump administration pardoned 23 people who were violating the FACE Act, which is meant to maintain open access to abortion clinic entrances and protect doctors and patients from harassment and violence. The department.
Trump signed an order enforcing the so-called Mexico City policy, a Reagan-era rule that bars Part A going to any organization that even discusses abortion as a healthcare option. Page 260. July's reconciliation bill in Congress is calling for a combo deal for Project 2025's architect. It includes provisions to eliminate subsidies and tax credits for renewable energy, which can be found on page 306, to impose...
Page 377. Many of the administration's attacks on abortion rights and contraception access are sourced all the way through this book. In March, the Trump administration pardoned 23 people who were violating the FACE Act, which is meant to maintain open access to abortion clinic entrances and protect doctors and patients from harassment and violence. The Department of Justice is also instructed to largely stop enforcing the law, signaling it will not defend abortion access even in states where abortion is legal. Page 558. In January, Trump signed an order enforcing the so-called Mexico City policy, a Reagan-era rule that bars foreign aid going to any organization that even discusses abortion as a healthcare option. Page 260. July's reconciliation bill in Congress was almost like a combo deal for Project 2025's architect. It includes provisions to eliminate subsidies and tax credits for renewable energy, which can be found on page 306, to impose stricter work requirements for SNAP food assistance from page 299, to increase the capacity of ICE detention facilities by 100,000 beds from page 143, to roll back student loan forgiveness and eliminate income-backed wildly successful first 8 months for the conservative interest groups and think tanks that joined up to write Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation, which led the project, has wielded influence in Washington for decades, but never as much as it does right now at this moment. Next month, Heritage is releasing a judicial counter project to Project 2025. It's called the Heritage Guide to the Constitution, which intends to reshape policies and priorities inside the judicial branch as much as it's already done within the executive branch. What could possibly go wrong? 2025, don't let this happen, America. Donald Trump said over and over again, I got nothing to do with it. He said, I don't agree with it at various times, and every single week, telling you the connections between the people who wrote the chapters and Donald Trump and videos of what they said. How do you fight this? He lied about his connection to it, and yet everything that was written in these books is coming to pass. This was one of the biggest media screw-ups I've seen in politics in my lifetime. Just simply because he denied the connection, he turned it into a both sides thing, and that really, but actually think about what it meant to, schools and vaccines or a vengeful DOJ. And I just imagine if the things that Donald Trump was promising and the Heritage Board promising were happening, this thing was toxic. Once it became unpopular, they had to deny that they were tied to it. They needed a bad guy and they needed a good guy in Project 2025. The bad guy was the deep state. Good guy, not necessarily Donald Trump, but a unitary executive, an all-powerful executive which would fight that deep state.
Involuntary lethal injection.
Just kill him. Involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill him. Involuntary lethal injection. Or something, just kill him. He called for unhoused people who don't take whatever resources that other guy is saying they should to just be put down like wild animals. And Ainsley Earhart was just like continuing on. I'd pause and do a follow-up question, but no. For Fox and Friends, evidently that's not a part of it. It's just these are undesirables, and so they'll all be put down by the power of the state. And that is so grotesque, and in particular, that it happened in a time when people are literally losing their on-camera jobs for being mean about the news. Brian Kilmeade's like, hold my beer, I'm gonna call for forced mass euthanization. And he only put out an apology literally days later. Now I'm gonna read it. We're gonna be fair here. He said, I wrongly said that they should get lethal injections. I apologize for fascism will become the norm. And what the norm of fascism looks like is Brian Kilmeade working for state television, saying things like, let's kill all these homeless people with, what do you say,
involuntary
lethal injections. You know the Nazis did that? But we also know that the Nazis also went after folks that they claimed were too autistic for society to have to deal with. Meanwhile, we have RFK Jr. attacking autistic people and taking away many of our own health advantages because they're going after the unfavorables in our society. We've already got people in gulags and in internment camps. It's almost like when you do Nazi things and someone identifies you as a Nazi, you can't turn around and say, look at that violent rhetoric, when all you've been doing is pushing violent rhetoric. And so, are we supposed to just let our friends who are in our communities who we know have fallen on hard times or on the streets, or veterans who had their safety nets taken away, suddenly we don't care about those folks? They should be legally injected. Brian Kilmeade should have been fired the second after that. They should have blacked out the screen and taken his ass off the air right then. But instead, we're giving him the benefit of the doubt. I saw some headline from some page that said Brian Kilmeade suggests there should be lethal injection. He said it.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Sorry, continue.
No, I'm done, man. I'm done.
You're 100% right. I don't often get to say this. That was worse than most of what Trump says. Like, we expect Trump's the worst, right? He says the worst, most violent things. No, that Kilmeade thing, that was more cold-blooded than how Trump talks about the You're right. I was not going hard enough. How was he not immediately fired? Like imagine if I was like, billionaires, they do a lot of evil stuff. They should be able to give up their wealth, and if not, they should all be put down like rabid dogs. Imagine if I said that on the air. Do you think that I would still have my job? He called for them to be poisoned to death. And he's fine. He's just fine. He's going to make $10 million, $20 million this year to call for that stuff. And again, by the way, we made this very clear last week that regardless of what the ideology of the shooter ends up being, I am not going to stop accurately labeling movements for what they are. It is still a fascist movement. That is what it is. And Jared's totally right. If you don't want to be called a Nazi, stop speed running your Nazi bucket list, okay? Stop doing exactly the things that the Nazis did. Again, by the way, as your president is calling for effectively the Democratic Party and its donors and its organizations to all be outlawed, which is, again, highly authoritarian.
If we're going to have these smart debate conversations that everybody always wanted to have, and that they say this guy was all about exhibiting and his lifeblood was behind, how about we have debate and talk about how clear as day, have a direct comparison to the Nazi agenda that's being carried out right now compared to the same Nazi agenda that was carried out in 1930s and 40s. It's stark. You cannot deny it. The way that once they're cornered with that obvious information is to say, how dare you? That's not an argument. That's a submission, bro. You've lost. So, again, that's why I don't have these conversations with folks. They're just telling you, we don't want conversations. We don't want to get to a better place. We want an authoritative rule over you. We want you dead.
Younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions.
Is that even the gun?
We want to talk about the general reaction threat thing that seem completely out of the ordinary, and the pace that the country seems to already be taking as we move forward from the assassination of conservative political figure and commentator Charlie Kirk. In the extremely fast and confusing news cycle playing out during this active investigation, people are putting out information as fast as they receive it, and in some cases, that information has already proven to be inaccurate. This is all made worse by the fact that the head of the FBI, Pat Patel, is so terminally online that he's essentially been live tweeting updates that have themselves also been inaccurate. Yeah, he's getting just as much information from his timeline as he is getting from his actual field agents in Utah working the case.
Is that even the gun?
We don't know yet. Can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have, saying these awful words, and not expect awful actions to take place. And that's the unfortunate environment we are in.
It's true, Charlie Kirk actively contributed to an atmosphere, and that's the unfortunate environment we are in.
The reaction from across the board has been one of shock and horror at not noted the entire media apparatus just willfully blaming this man, glossing over all of his extremist views entirely. There's been hours and hours of discussions about Kirk, experts and guests all talking about him, but essentially zero acknowledgement of the actual, the kind of rhetoric that he used to push a message that was extremely hateful and dangerous. In fact, during the initial coverage of the shooting, an MSNBC guest contributor named Matthew Dowd was live reacting and explained why he thought someone like Kirk would be targeted, and his comments got him fired from the gig.
He's been one of the most divisive, younger figures in the who is constantly pushing this hate speech aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. And I think that is the environment we are in. You can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have, saying these awful words, and not expect awful actions to take place. And that's the unfortunate environment we are in.
It's true, Charlie Kirk actively contributed to an atmosphere, and that's the unfortunate environment we are in.
We fully acknowledge that when you have liberty, you're going to have sometimes undesirable outcomes. So a firearm could be used for sharpshooting, or it could be used for a massacre, or to, murder somebody. In a free society, people are going to do bad things and dumb things, but there is a price to liberty.
We acknowledge that there will be unnecessary deaths. We acknowledge that in a culture that believes that owning a firearm is a right, not a privilege, our goal should be about limiting the suffering, but acknowledging that you're not going to get rid of it completely.
So a firearm could be used for sharpshooting, or it could be used for a massacre, or to, murder somebody. People are going to do bad things and dumb things, but there is a price to liberty.
You say the founders only want or thought that, okay, must get Second Amendment. Did they only think First Amendment, parchment and paper, not Twitter? I'm sorry, can you rephrase? If the Second Amendment was only intended to cover muskets, is the First Amendment only intended to cover letter writing, not talk on the internet?
That's a good point. But here's the thing.
Meaning these principles transcend technology. And that's where we come from, is that you have a First Amendment right whether you're speaking freely on a message board or if you're just talking like the Founding Fathers would. You have a Second Amendment right whether it's a musket or whether it's an AR-15, because the principle and the truth that undergirds it, and I'll let you in a second,
for sure,
is transcendent above the technology.
So, I'm going to use your logic a little bit. When the Constitution was written, slaves existed in the United States, and that was amended and added to the Constitution when we freed the slaves. The same with women, we gave them the right to vote. So, I don't understand why, it feels it's a little bit of cherry picking going on, because the Constitution is constantly evolving and changing.
Well, but hold on, the First and Second Amendment have never changed.
Does that mean they can't?
Well, but we
have a ratification process.
Of course they can, but we think it shouldn't.
Is that even the gun?
We're going to talk about the general reactions, threats, things that seem completely out of the ordinary, and the shape that the country seems to already be taking as we move forward from the assassination of conservative political figure and commentator Charlie Kirk. In the extremely fast and confusing news cycle playing out during this act, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech, or sort of, we're going to talk about the general reactions, threats, things that seem completely out of the ordinary, and the shape that the country seems to already be taking as we move forward from the assassination of conservative political figure and commentator the extremely divisive, especially Charlie Kirk. The extremely divisive, especially hate speech, or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. The extremely divisive, especially Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk.
Extremely divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. Charlie Kirk.